All right, so what is the GCC series? This is going to combine the functionality of a VPN router, a next generation firewall, an IPPBX switch, a network switch, and then depending on which model you get, it also includes a Wi-Fi access point. And these are all going to combine into one product. So currently we have 3 GCC models that are coming out, and we're going to cover those on the next slide. All right, so the first set of products in the GCC series that are launching are going to be the GCC 6010, which is here on the left, the GCC 6010W in the middle, and the GCC 6011. And I'm going to note the GCC 6010 is available for purchase now, and the GCC 6010W and 6011 are targeted to launch in early September. But if you are interested in the 6010, NTS does have these in stock and are ready to fulfill your orders. So each of the models are going to contain at least 4 of the 5 modules that I talked about on the previous slide. And I'm not going to read through all of these specs. I know everybody on here can read a spec sheet, but I do want to cover a few differences between the products. So with the GCC 6010, you get your network switch with 2 2.5 gigabit SFP ports, 5 gigabit Ethernet ports, 4 of which are going to be PoE output ports. You get the VPN router, the next generation firewall, and the IPPBX, which is going to come default with 12 users and 4 concurrent call paths. We do have multiple upgrades that are available for the IPPBX, and it might be kind of hard to see, but towards the bottom of the screen here, there is a link that takes you to a page that has the pricing and the different upgrades that we do have available for the IPPBX. I'm going to have this link on multiple slides, and I'll also add it to the chat towards the end of the webinar. So with the GCC 6010W, this is going to provide 5 gigabit Ethernet ports, the dual band Wi-Fi 6 access point, a VPN router, next generation firewall, and again, the IPPBX with 12 users and 4 concurrent calls by default. And the last model is the GCC 6011, which is going to provide your network switch with 2 2.5 gigabit SFP ports and 10 gigabit Ethernet ports. And then again, the VPN router, next gen firewall, and IPPBX. One thing to note with the 6010 and the 6011, they both have a max PoE output of 36 watts. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go into all 5 of these modules, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into what each of them are and some of their capabilities. So we'll start here with the VPN router. All 3 of the GCC series models are going to include this VPN router, which really is going to allow for easy and secure remote access, as well as establishing your secure site-to-site connections. The GCC 6010 and the 6011 have a 2.5 gigabit per second routing capacity and a 1 gig IPsec VPN throughput, while the GCC 6010W has a 3 gig routing capacity and a 1 gig IPsec throughput. And then with multiple WAN ports on the router, this is really going to allow you to configure your load balancing and your failover. And this is all easily configured through GDMS, which is our management portal. And we will touch on that again here in another slide. The VPN router also supports your DHCP server, your DNS server, your IGMP proxy, turn server, as well as your IPv4 and IPv6. And then it also supports multiple remote VPN server protocols. So currently we're supporting WireGuard for site-to-site, OpenVPN for clients and servers, point-to-point protocol or your PPTP, for your clients and servers, your layer 2 tunneling protocol or L2TP for client to site, IPsec for site to site and client to site. And then we do support remote user management, which can be configured with your PPTP, IPsec, and OpenVPN. All right, so the firewall module of the GCC series, this is going to be a next generation firewall, and it does have the VB100 Grade A anti-malware certification. And it does have a very in-depth policy option that's going to allow you to define the GCC device and how it handles inbound traffic. Some of these policies are going to include your rules policy, your inbound rules, your forwarding rules, your advanced NAT rules, your global configuration. It's also going to feature an advanced threat protection by instantly identifying and immediately responding to sophisticated attacks. It's going to support your application and protocol monitoring, as well as traffic statistics with an AI-based DPI or deep packet inspection. So the next-gen firewall does come with very robust filtering and content control features that are going to allow you to identify and control traffic based on DNS, URL, URL category, keywords, and an overall application. And with the web filtering feature, you can this can be deeply defined to ensure users aren't accessing your malicious websites. The application filtering feature prevents designated application categories from being used. And it also has an optional AI recognition to help the GCC device more accurately classify those applications. So this is going to provide an adaptive intrusion detection and prevention with features like signature-based scanning, auto rule updates, real-time SSL deep inspection, SSL blacklist and whitelist, and then geo-IP enforcement. The last feature I want to cover here with the next-gen firewall is the comprehensive attack defense. And really, this is going to protect against your denial of service attacks. It's going to provide enhanced spoofing defense, and it's going to protect against attacks on ARP vulnerabilities. I'm going to pause here just for a second to make sure doing all right on the questions here. It's like Danny's pretty busy. All right. So the next module is the integrated IP-PBX module. And if you are familiar with Grandstream's UCM or other PBX solutions, this is going to feature all of the same features that you would get within the UCM products that we currently offer. And again, like I mentioned, each model does support 12 users and 4 concurrent calls by default. We do have upgrades available for up to 200 users and 24 concurrent calls. Again, I've included a link under the first bullet point. That's where we list all of our our upgrade plans and the pricing for those. So feel free to look at that for the upgrade pricing. I will, again, at the end of the webinar, add that to the chat. So like I mentioned, the IP-PBX does provide a full voice and video communication and collaboration platform, which is going to be compatible with all Grandstream SIP endpoints and with our Wave app. If you're not familiar with our Wave app, it's essentially going to be our soft phone. And that's available on both desktop, web, and mobile. And then all of the features that you would find in our UCM PBX solutions are included with the GCC series. Some of those are going to include your call forwarding, your transfer, your call parking, voicemail, instant messaging, intercom and paging, IVR, emergency calls, and more. In addition, with those features, we do have a wide set of CRM, PMS, and other integrations that are available with API capabilities as well. As we talk about the hospitality deployment, I do have a lot more information on this, some of these integrations towards the end of the webinar. So the network switch module, this is a little more straightforward. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I do want to touch on a few things. And like I mentioned, with the 6010, you do get 5 gigabit Ethernet ports and 2.5 gigabit SFP ports. One thing to note here is that all of the ports on the GCC 6010 are going to be WAN LAN configurable, but you have a maximum of 3 WAN ports. And this model is also going to be desktop and wall mountable. It's going to be it's just slightly too small to fit in a rack. So with the GCC 6011, this one's going to be 10 gigabit Ethernet ports and 2.5 gigabit SFP ports. Instead of having all WAN LAN configurable ports, this one does have it does have 3 fixed WAN ports. And then the GCC 6011 is both rack and desktop mountable. All right, and the access point module. This is only available right now on the GCC 6010W. And that is going to feature a dual band Wi-Fi 6 access point with 2x2 multi-user MIMO technology and supporting up to 500 concurrent clients. It also includes comprehensive Wi-Fi security protection with intrusion prevention, anti-hacking measures, a secure boot, critical data and control lockdown, unique security certificates, and some additional features which would include your captive portals, which we will touch on again here later in the webinar. All of these can be configured in GDMS, and it does feature virtual access points as well. This device, it can be set up as the master if you want to create a mesh Wi-Fi network with additional Grandstream access points, and it can support up to 150 GWN access points. And with that being said, that is all 5 of the modules. I do want to cover a couple of features really quick, and then we will jump into the deployments. So I do want to cover QoS. I do believe this is one of the key features and competitive advantages of the GCC series. So Grandstream's really been working on QoS for almost 25 years now, and we really wanted to carry this over to include what we're calling a built-in smart QoS in the GCC series. And this is really going to be a major differentiator of the GCC series. So by integrating the networking and the IP-PBX functionality, the GCC series is going to significantly reduce latency and provide a smart QoS engine. This is going to offer you more control over the usage of bandwidth, and it's going to ensure that all application services aren't being affected by the amount of traffic being exchanged. There are some advanced features that are going to allow you to prioritize the traffic of applications by category or individually. The priority levels you can be set into 4 classes. And you can configure your QoS class rules, which are rules that set the QoS based on IP addresses or ports. You have VoIP prioritization, which is going to allow the user to identify and prioritize the VoIP traffic that's being forwarded by the GCC device. And in addition, it does provide traffic statistics with an AI recognition, and it allows for bandwidth limits to be set by the IP address and the MAC address. I've talked a lot about GDMS. If you are familiar with Grandstream and you've used our products in the past, you know Primarily, all of our UC products were managed through GDMS. We've recently merged our networking and UC management platform into one. So now all Grandstream endpoints, both the GCC, all of our UC products and all of our networking products can be managed through GDMS. And what we're trying to do here is create a centralized administrative interface that's going to allow you to deploy and manage your GCC series and all of your other Grandstream endpoints through one location. This is going to include everything from a high-level overview of the network all the way down to a granular level to see exactly what's happening with every endpoint or client. And a few key features to note while you're using GDMS to deploy and manage your GCC device include your dynamic real-time reporting, monitoring, your remote management, and multiple built-in diagnostic tools. And for anyone that doesn't want to, or for some reason, I know there's a lot of people who can't manage their network in the cloud, you do also have the ability to manage the GCC series with a local web UI or GWN Manager, which is essentially our software version of GDMS that you would just download on a local server. All right. So typically when we talk about GCC deployments, we're typically talking about the SMB marketplace, but I really wanted to explore how the GCC series could be utilized in a hospitality deployment. And ideally, we're looking at using GCC in our smaller hotels, our lodges, our inns, and our bed and breakfast. And I will note we have multiple, we're gonna have more models coming out in the future that are gonna have higher capacity and will be able to support some of the larger hotel deployments. But for now, we're gonna focus on the smaller hotels. And because the GCC series is an all-in-one platform, it's really gonna be able to provide a hospitality deployment with Wi-Fi networks for both employees and guests, a full suite of communication options. It's going to provide advanced networking and security capabilities with the VPN and next generation firewall modules. And it has one platform that's going to manage the entire solution. So Grandstream also offers multiple complementary products and features that can be deployed in conjunction with the GCC device. Some of these in the Wi-Fi category would be our access points, our captive portals, and QoS. In the communication and collaboration category, we have multiple IP phones, IP video phones, Wi-Fi phones, and the Wave app, which I mentioned earlier is going to be our soft phone. And then in the facility access categories, we have control stations, IP cameras, intercoms, and we have multiple integrations from PMS, CRM, and APIs. So really, I want to list two limitations that I would consider before using GCC in a hospitality deployment. And the two main ones for me are going to be, there's a maximum of 24 concurrent call paths, and the second is being a maximum throughput of 2.5 gigabits per second. If those aren't an issue, then the GCC device is going to be perfect for your hospitality deployment. So I'm going to break this down into a couple of different aspects. The first one that I want to look at is using the GCC device to create your Wi-Fi networks in the hotel. So the GCC series, like I mentioned earlier, it can be deployed with additional GWN access points in a mesh topology. And I'm going to utilize that and break these down into two separate networks. So the first category is going to be for the hotel connectivity and overall Wi-Fi network for the hotel. And then we're going to talk about in-room connectivity as well. And as I'm going through these points, I do have a diagram after this slide that kind of ties everything together, but I do want to talk through it first. So for the hotel connectivity, the GCC device is going to be deployed to the core of the network, and it's going to be connected to an access layer switch. And then additional access points or GWN access points are going to be connected to that switch to provide a Wi-Fi network for the hotel. And in this example, we're using the GWN 7665, which is our Wi-Fi 6E access point. And then for the in-room connectivity, we're going to deploy a GWN 7603 to the individual hotel rooms. And the GWN 7603 is a desktop mounted access point with multiple Ethernet ports. So all of the in-room IP endpoints can be connected to the Ethernet ports of the GWN 7603, which is going to provide Wi-Fi for the guest in room, and it's going to power your IP phones, your IP TVs, and your other IP endpoints. And then some of the GCC features that are going to allow you to manage the network quality are going to be your VLANs, your VLAN QoS, your bandwidth limits, policy routing, and your captive portals. So we'll take a look at the first example of creating the Wi-Fi network. And I know this is a very high-level overview. Every hotel is different. There's a lot of different factors that come into place. But to give you an example of what this would look like we mentioned, the GCC device is being deployed to the core of the network. Get my cursor over here. It is being managed by GDMS, and then we've connected an access layer switch to one of the Ethernet ports on the GCC device and connected multiple GWN 7665s or our access points. We're going to utilize this to provide the hotel with a Wi-Fi network. And then for the in-room connectivity, we're deploying, like I mentioned, the 7603, which you can see at the bottom left of the diagram. We're choosing this one because it has multiple Ethernet ports, and then we're going to be able to take the IP phone, which is going to be our hotel phone, the IP computer, and the IP TV, and we're going to be able to connect it through those Ethernet ports to not only provide power, but to also provide the Wi-Fi coverage for the guest in the hotel room. And then the hotel is able to utilize our captive portals to give each guest individual access to that network. And the second category that I want to cover in deploying GCC into the hospitality industry is going to be the IP-PBX, or the communication functions. So again, in this example, the GCC device is connected to the core of the network, and then we're going to connect a separate access switch to the GCC Ethernet ports for all of the IP phones. And then you can connect your IP phones for the guest reception and the workstations to that access switch. And then employees like your housekeeping or anyone who's not fixed to a desk and who can roam around, they can utilize our Wi-Fi phones, which can connect to the Wi-Fi network that we created in the first diagram for connectivity. The other option we have is the Wave app, like I mentioned, which is our soft phone that can be downloaded on a mobile device and desktop to give you remote access to all of the GCC's IP-PBX functionality. And then for the guest room, the IP phones were already connected in the previous example to the GWN 7603s. So the GCC IP-PBX does have multiple hospitality features that are going to help configure and manage the voice network. Some of these consist of the highly configurable multiple level IVRs, the auto attendant, highly configurable call routing options, call center suites, QoS and VoIP prioritization, multiple PMS and CRM integrations. We've got Google Calendar integrations and APIs, and then again, the Wave integration. So we'll take a look at this one. So again, we've got the GCC device deployed to the core and being managed by GDMS. and then we have connected our access layer switch to the Ethernet ports on the GCC device. And we're utilizing that for different phones like your reception phone, your front desk, or any desk phone for your offices. They can be connected directly to that access switch. And then, like I mentioned, for the employees who are on the move, like your housekeeping, they can utilize the WP826 or any of our other Wi-Fi related phones to connect to the Wi-Fi network that we already created, and they would have access that way. And for any remote employees or anyone on the move, they can also download the Wave app on a mobile device or a desktop device to gain access to the IPPBX functionality as well. And the last piece here is really the features of the next-gen firewall and the VPN router. They're going to tie the whole deployment together. So some of the features of the firewall to ensure the network and guest information is safe and secure would be our content and application filtering, our anti-malware, our intrusion detection and prevention, preventing against DOS attacks, defending against ARP vulnerabilities. Some of the features with the VPN router to assist with our traffic management and optimization would be utilizing those multiple WAN ports to create load balancing and failover, setting up advanced VLANs to separate our network traffic, for instance, our back office versus guest network, setting up our PBX VLANs to segregate the voice traffic on the network. And really, we're going to do this to minimize the potential of interference or congestion, enhance the security by isolating the PBX traffic. Then we also have our VPNs for private networks and our general traffic management. This is the last slide here that I want to cover. And I do want to highlight a few of the GCC integrations that are really going to complement the hospitality industry in general. So we do have multiple CRM integrations, like I mentioned, a few of them listed here, Sugar, vTiger, Salesforce, and ACT. We have multiple API configurations. The PMS integrations to assist with your check-in and check-out, your wake-up calls, your room status, do not disturb, and your housekeeper functions. And we do have PMS APIs, and this is really going to allow the user to use their own middleware to work with the PMS systems instead of currently supported integrations that we have today. We have different call center integrations, Google services, so you can integrate the PBX with Google Calendar, multiple Wave integrations, and like I touched on earlier, being able to create that captive portal through GDMS. So that's everything that I have today. I can see the chat is going crazy, so I'm going to pause for a second, make sure that we're caught up on all the questions, and if there's anything that we need to bring online, Danny, just let me know. If not, we'll do our best to get to all the questions.